Hello everyone and welcome to another chess video. Today we're going to look at another game between AlphaZero and Stockfish. In this game AlphaZero doesn't sacrifice anything but instead manages to gain control of the dark squares from black. And it's an incredible game and really one that we can all learn from about how to control the middle game and just how to control different positions with our pieces. So in this game AlphaZero formulates a plan to take control of dark squares from Stockfish's territory. And AlphaZero does this on another level. So here AlphaZero is white, Stockfish 8 is black, and of course AlphaZero begins with d4, Stockfish plays knight f6, c4 from AlphaZero now, and e6 from Stockfish. Knight to f3, b6, and now g3, bishop b7, bishop g2, and bishop e7 from Stockfish. And here AlphaZero plays knight c3 and Stockfish goes in for an early knight e4, undermining this knight on c3 straight away. If white captures here, it's actually really even for both sides. If knight takes e4, bishop takes e4, both sides can castle now. After knight to e5, captures. This is just a very equal game now and both sides have got good chances. But after knight to e4, AlphaZero played bishop to d2, just developing, and d5 now from Stockfish. AlphaZero captures on d5 and now e takes d5. And here it was noted that AlphaZero actually really likes fixing the centre pawns. And once the pawns have been fixed, this usually means that AlphaZero is now going to attack on the wings. So to begin the attack, AlphaZero now plays queen a4 check. King d7 is played to block, and usually here white plays queen c2, which has been played in a number of games, and play could continue knight takes d2, queen takes d2, castles from both sides, knight c6, and actually h4 is given by Stockfish here, maybe trying to play e3 as well, where black now has the two bishops but white's probably going to try and gain control of the dark squares by putting all the pawns on black squares. Again, this is what other players have played. But those were human players and AlphaZero is a computer, and here they actually play queen to b3. So maybe it's trying to attack this d5 pawn, or maybe just putting the queen into a square that it thinks is better. Stockfish captures on c3, queen takes c3, and knight to a6 from Stockfish. Stockfish is now maybe preparing to play b4 at some point, maybe even c5. So AlphaZero here actually plays a3 and prepares b4 themselves, and stops any pieces jumping into that square. And also note, this is the first move that AlphaZero plays where it starts dominating the dark squares, so straight away it's taken b4 away from Stockfish. Black castles here, AlphaZero now plays b4. c5 could be played here, but after b takes c5, b takes c5, rook b1, it's noted that black now has a terrible knight on a6 and the rook's on the open file on b1 for AlphaZero. And eventually after maybe c takes d4, this d5 pawn becomes very weak as well. So white's really got no issues here. So instead of playing actively, Stockfish actually plays a bit passively. They play rook a c8 here, getting their rook behind the c pawn. Rook b1 is played by AlphaZero and Stockfish plays c6. AlphaZero now plays h4 with the idea of moving the pawn up to h6. And also note that AlphaZero also now controls one more dark square with the g5 square being taken away by this pawn. Stockfish plays bishop to d6 and now bishop to h3 from AlphaZero. So attacking the queen and the rook at the same time. Stockfish is forced to play f5 here to block that bishop and blunt it. But what are the consequences of f5? Well, this weakens g5 and also weakens e5 because this pawn's had to move up so far up the board. And as a consequence of this, AlphaZero now plays bishop to f4. And after bishop takes f4, g takes f4, AlphaZero's got rid of their worst minor piece and black's best minor piece. And as a result, white now controls literally all the dark squares on the 5th rank. So all these squares are taken up by white, and knight to e5 is a real danger for black here. There's also an open g file for white's rook, so black could be under a lot of pressure very soon. Queen e6 is played by Stockfish here, and I was thinking what would happen here, because e3 looks really natural for white, but actually this is a terrible move, because Queen e4 can be played, attacking the knight and the rook on b1 at the same time, and if King e2 to defend, black can actually play knight takes b4 here, and if a takes b4, bishop a6 comes, and white's in a terrible position. If that king moves away, the queen's going to take on the knight on f3, so b5 is pretty much forced, and after bishop takes b5, white's probably forced to take the bishop off, and after c takes, white has two pieces for the rook, but they're in a terrible state. The queen's attacked and rook c2 is coming in, so for this reason a move like e3 here to try and stabilise wouldn't work. Instead, AlphaZero here seeks to try and trade queens. They play queen to e3, but Stockfish is having none of it. They play queen to h6. If queen takes e3, f takes e3, the plan is simple for white now. I know I've got a lot of green squares and green arrows covered here, but I'll just take you through them quickly. So the idea for AlphaZero here is to shove their rooks on the g file and c file, and weirdly we've got this Y formation in the centre for white's pawn structure, which is very unusual. But actually this is quite a solid pawn structure because black's going to have trouble attacking it. And basically AlphaZero now is going to shove the h pawn up to h6, put the rooks on the open files, and it's quite easy to play for white. So for this reason, after queen to e3, Stockfish plays queen h6 to avoid the trade. AlphaZero now plays queen to e7, so attacking the bishop on b7, rook c7 to defend, and now queen g5. So again, AlphaZero is asking the question, just swap queens please. But again, Stockfish moves their queen away to e6, and now AlphaZero plays h5, trying to play h6 and gain a massive attack. Rook b3 was also another idea here, maybe to play rook to e3. If a move like bishop c8, again white can play h5, and if Stockfish could play h6 to block, and queen g3, queen f6, again queen g6 is a move, and if queen d8 to avoid the exchange, now rook e3, this is really easy to play for white. But it's similar to the game because AlphaZero now played h5 as I said, and here Stockfish tries to gain some counterplay with c5. So AlphaZero takes, b takes, and now h6 comes, and g6 is played by Stockfish. So let's just assess what's happening here. White now dominates, the black squares on e5, f6 and g7. The centre's great for white's knight on e5, it'll be a great outpost there. And white also has the open b file, and their idea is simple, to play bishop to b2 and attack this d5 pawn. White's doing really well here. The bishop on b7 is blunted by black, and the knight on a6 is in a really awkward position. I could say that the rook on c7 looks a bit awkward as well. So here AlphaZero gets on with their plan, they play bishop g2. c4 is played by Stockfish, so they've got a passed pawn, that's their only salvation. And now knight to e5, just a beautifully placed knight. Bishop a8 is played by Stockfish, getting off this b file. And finally AlphaZero actually castles in this position. Stockfish plays knight to b8, so going to reroute that knight, so probably attack the e5 knight, which makes sense. But now rook b5 from AlphaZero. So ganging up on this d5 pawn, the weakest pawn on the board at the moment. Rook fc8 is played, doubling rooks, so maybe trying to push the c pawn for Stockfish. Queen g3 manoeuvring the queen to a better square, and knight d7 to undermine the c5 knight. Now queen e3 is played by AlphaZero, and I'll try and explain what AlphaZero is trying to achieve here. So instead of trying to infiltrate on the g file, it's going to go into the centre, and it's just moved the queen into the centre, maybe trade queens at some point, and infiltrate these dark squares. Stockfish plays king f8, so AlphaZero plays rook c1 with the idea of guarding this c pawn, maybe playing rook c3 and rook to e3 at a later date. Queen e8 now from Stockfish, and a4, so solidifying this rook on b5 from the queen and just gaining more space. Queen e6 now from Stockfish. And now I think AlphaZero played an interesting move. So AlphaZero plays knight takes d7 check and queen takes d7. So what's happened here is white's actually given up their brilliant knight on e5 for black's last defender. But it had to be done, to be honest. For white to infiltrate these dark squares, that knight had to be given up. And basically that bishop on a8 is pretty useless at the moment for black. So white should have tremendous chances here. So AlphaZero plays queen e5, just dominating these dark squares. And this pawn on h6 is a real thorn in black's side, because a timely g7 or a sacrifice on g6 at any moment would be tremendously devastating for black. Stockfish plays rook e8, attacking the queen. And we'll see the power of this queen now. Queen h8 check and king e7. Queen g7 from AlphaZero check. King d8. Queen f6 check. Queen e7. And now we see what AlphaZero is up to with these checks. Queen a6. So attacking now on the other side of the board. Bishop c6 to attack the rook. And now rook c5. So that bishop on c6 is under attack. And the bishop retreats back to a8. But now AlphaZero gets their other piece into attack with rook b1. Stockfish captures on c5, d takes c5. And here if black decides to capture the pawn again with queen takes c5, this actually leads black into a terrible position, because rook b8 check, king d7, captures, queen e6, king d8, queen g8, king c7, and white can capture on h7. And for king b6, queen d7, white's going to get a queen very quickly. And if black tries to counter this with c3, there's a brilliant combination here actually. Queen d8 check, king a6, and white can actually afford to play bishop f1 now to eye up this king. If black continues with c2, white can play e4 check. King b7 is the only move. And now white plays h7. If black gets a queen, white's going to get a queen, and white's attack is actually just too strong here. Queen takes a8 check is coming in, so black's got to defend with queen c8. But after queen takes c8, queen takes c8, bishop to a6 check comes, and after the king captures, just queen takes c8 and it's game over. Such an amazing combination to look through. So in this position black can't take on c5 due to that long combination. So Stockfish plays queen c7 here. AlphaZero continues with queen f6 check, king c8, and now e3 to solidify, bishop b7, and queen d4 from AlphaZero. So attacking this d5 pawn, so rook d8 defends it, and actually here AlphaZero plays a5 to gain more space. And of course if queen takes a5 here, AlphaZero can play rook to a1, and after a move like queen b5, just take on a7. Black can give a check, the king moves, the queen goes back, and a move like bishop f3, queen c6 and bishop d1 gives white a nice advantage in the endgame, because bishop a4 is coming, and white's just got really nicely placed attacking pieces. Here though, Stockfish plays bishop c6, AlphaZero plays queen f6, queen d7 from Stockfish, and rook b4 from AlphaZero. And we'll just see some nice technique from AlphaZero now. After rook e8, a6, and AlphaZero's got these two nice outposts, one on g7 and one on b7. AlphaZero really likes pushing these two pawns up. And similarly actually, I've seen recent games with AlphaZero, who also likes pushing these pawns really far up the board. So maybe that's something to take note in our own games as well. Rook d8 from Stockfish, king h2, rook e8, bishop f3, queen c7, queen b2, rook f8, king g1, rook e8, queen f6, queen d7, king g2. So this is just some computer manoeuvring right now. Rook e7, king f1, rook e8 and bishop g2. So again, both sides are just manoeuvring. After king h2, queen c7, bishop f3 again. Stockfish here actually finally played c3. But what happens if Stockfish continues to shuffle with rook d8? Well, here actually AlphaZero can take on c4, and if d takes c4, bishop takes c6, and white's actually winning this position now. If c3 here, white's got to be spot on with the calculation, but bishop b7 check, king b8, and now just queen takes c3. White's in a nice position. If queen e7, king g3 to defend h4. And again, white's plan is simple, just play c6, or maybe queen a5 and get into a nice position. Black's the exchange up, but white's actually winning this. Instead of c3 though, after in this position, rook d2 is also an option to gain more activity. But in this case, queen e6 can be played. After king b8, bishop d5, attacking the c4 pawn. If queen takes c5, queen e5 can be played, queen c7, queen e8, and thanks to triangulation, white can play queen b5 check, king c7, and actually pick up the rook with queen to a5 check. So this is all very complicated. I don't think a human player will be able to see all this. And in this game, Stockfish now just played c3 to gain more activity. But here, AlphaZero played bishop d1, stopped in c2. d4 is played, so Stockfish is trying to get some activity and open that bishop up. But rook takes d4 is played, bishop e4 though, and bishop b3. Queen e7 from Stockfish. Both sides capture, and rook c4, so white's going to win this pawn on c3. After rook e6, rook takes c3, rook takes a6 from Stockfish, so they pick up this important a6 pawn. Rook c1. So as I highlighted here, we can see why AlphaZero is going to win this game. This h7 pawn from Stockfish is incredibly weak. Unfortunately, it's also on a white square for AlphaZero. So eventually this bishop is going to pick up this pawn, or AlphaZero is just going to walk their king into this position, and it could be a very nice finish. So this h6 push in the game was very important for AlphaZero. The game continues though with rook c6 from Stockfish. We'll see if they were able to defend it. King g3, a5, f3 attacking the bishop, bishop d3, and king h4. So AlphaZero is going to try and walk the king in. Rook c7, king g5. So that king is really nicely placed now. Rook a7 getting behind this pawn, but just bishop a4 to block, very nice. Bishop e2, and now e4. So white's hoping to take on f5, but Stockfish captures, and rook b7. e5 is played, rook b4 attacking the bishop, but now just bishop e8. So maybe Stockfish is threatening to take on g6 here and just launch this h pawn up the board. So bishop d3 defends this idea, but now just bishop f7, and here Stockfish resigned, or it was adjudicated to have lost. And why was this? Well, how is black going to defend that h7 pawn now? If black continues with rook b7, I'm guessing AlphaZero will just play e6 and just march the king in with a very easy game. So for this reason, Stockfish resigned in this position. So throughout the game, AlphaZero's main aim was to dominate the dark squares, and it did so, and ultimately this h6 move cost Stockfish the game. I would just like to point out though that Stockfish defended incredibly well and really made it tough for AlphaZero to win this type of game. So that was some incredible slogging defence, and it did take a while for AlphaZero to finally break down Stockfish's position. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you did enjoy the video, and I'll be with you with more chess videos in the future. Please also drop a comment. I do love reading them, and I try to reply to every single one. Please also check my description below. Add me on chess.com if you fancy a game sometime. Thank you very much.